afternoon and welcome to this week's episode of LevelUp Cyber Live. I am your host, Tony Bryan, and so excited about my guest today, Andrew Wilder. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tony. Great to be here, man.
So it's July 5th right now. So, of course, I hope everybody had a great and safe and fantastic 4th of July. Got to celebrate Independence Day for our country. I know it's one of my favorite holidays over the years to get out and spend time and do some barbecuing and whatnot with the family. So, I'm excited to jump into today's topic. It's an important one, I think. The idea of mentoring and mentoring and mentors. Andrew's got some great information for us. But before we jumped into it, man, I'd love for you just to introduce yourself. Jump into how you got into this crazy field of cybersecurity. Kind of run through your kind of journey and how you got to where you're at.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you the fairly quick version, Tony. So. I started, one of the first jobs I had out of school was working at a paper company in San Diego. And we had, the office staff and the warehouse staff. I did customer service, but because it was a small company, I ended up doing everything. I did finance, I did marketing and sales, did inventory. When we get really busy, I'd go out in the warehouse and pick pallets and put them on the truck. So one day the owner of the company comes to me and he says, "Hey, Andrew, we're going to replace our old mainframe system with Windows servers and Windows workstations." And I said, "Okay, that sounds good." And he said, "Well, you're the youngest guy, so you get to do it." And I said, "Okay." So over the next 3 months, I worked nights and weekends. I did all the data conversion by hand. And one day we go live with this new program. And it was a very, very satisfying moment of my very new career. And so I thought, hey, maybe I should do IT as a career. So I saved up some vacation time. I saved up about $2,000 and went to Chicago in the winter for 2 weeks. And at the end, I had passed 7 different exams and came back as a Microsoft certified systems engineer. So for those of you that remember back then in the early 2000s, that was really resume candy. I put my resume out all over the country. I got picked up by HP doing a job for Bank of America in a vulnerability management program, doing some upgrades for them. And did that, did some other contracts with HP, so worked for Nestle and worked for DHL, and got job offers actually from all 3 of them. And I ended up accepting the offer at Nestle because I really fell in love with their culture. So for the next 18 years, I stayed at Nestle. About every 2 to 3 years, I'd just get more scope, more budget, more responsibility. Left Nestle in 21 and then realized there that I was kind of at the top of my game. And so the next company that called and said, "Do you want to interview to be our global CISO?" I said, yes. That company was Hillenbrand. I was there for about 2 years, kind of rebuilt their cybersecurity program from the ground up. Now I'm looking for my next role and continuing to teach at Washington University. So that's my background in as fast of a nutshell as I could do it.
Well, I think it's indicative, right? Like you go back to years ago when there weren't programs like CyberUp and there weren't degrees, right? It was very traditional IT or some periphery code, right? The core of just kind of coding languages and stuff where people got in. And I feel like most people got pulled into cyber as like, you know what? You're a motivated person. You seem smart. We're going to pull you in. You're now, the InfoSec person on the team. Go. So it's happened. So it's been an interesting evolution to see where we've come from those days to have such structured training programs and certifications. But who knew that Microsoft certifications were, and they seem to be getting pretty busy in cyber over the last couple months and doing a lot of stuff. Them and Google have done quite a bit.
Yeah.
So the topic du jour, mentoring and mentors, right? So I know, do you want to start with the top 5? Or you want to start off with some of your stories? Well, we'll leave it open to discussion here. I know you had a
So I think what I'd like to start with for our listeners today is the top 5. So I did some research as we were leading up to this topic, and I realized that I have mentored more than 100 people. And over the years, I'd like to think that I kind of got better at it. And so I developed these 5 things that I would do with everyone that I would mentor. And I mentored about probably 25 or so people that were outside of my team, and the other 75 or so are all people that reported to me, whether directly or indirectly. So here's what I would do. So the first one is reviewing your current job description and looking at any gaps that you have related to your own job, right? So if you're at a big company, you can go talk to HR, you can talk to your manager and say, hey, I want to see my job description. And you can start looking at, here's all the things that my job description requires of me. Are there any gaps that I have for that? And based on that, creating a development plan. And a development plan doesn't have to be, I'm going to do this in the next 30 days or whatever. It can be kind of a stretching plan that may even go beyond a year. And I usually would do 2 development goals related to technical things, like there's a new certification that I need. And then 2 development plans related to leadership skills or soft skills that will help you to address your current role. So that's step 1. And we would review that in the next session. We would look at all the gaps, and we look at the plans, and we talk about how we could do those. The second thing is reviewing those different development goals. That's kind of the second session, making sure you have the good mix, doing kind of a self-assessment of where you sit from a technical perspective and where you sit from kind of a leadership or soft skills perspective. The other thing that was something that we got from Nestle is what we call the 70-20-10 approach. So 70% of your learning is done by doing something, 20% of it is done through relationships, like having a mentor or a coach, and then 10% of it is done through formal learning, like classroom training, things like that. And I think that really fits well with CyberUp and our mission, where we want to do the 70% for people, right? We want to place people as apprentices and give them that kind of hands-on learning. And that's really where we see people learning the best and the most effectively. So that's the second one. The third one is, let's go beyond your current role. Let's look at your career goals. And it doesn't have to be just your next role. And it doesn't have to be just one thing for your next role. Maybe there's a couple different things that you're considering as your next role, and we can look to your next role and beyond that as well, and then continuing that same exercise. So looking at the gaps for those next roles that you might want, looking at some different things you can get to explore and understand more about them. You're a SOC analyst today and you want to be a penetration tester, so looking at kind of the requirements for that, what kind of classes you can take, what sort of leadership skills you can develop to get there as well, people you can talk to who are currently doing it. So that's the third one. The fourth one is really fun. The fourth one is your vision board. So I don't like to put a lot of rules around it. I just give some guidelines. Some people come with something that looks like you would think about making in like 8th grade, which is a bunch of pictures from the internet just all posted onto a thing, and like, this is what I dream and what I want to do. Some people put a spreadsheet, it's very meticulous. I don't want to put any rules around it. But what I do tell you is, once you've got that vision board and you set the time for it, 1, 3, 5 years, 1, 5, 10, whatever works for you, then you take that and you print it out and you put it on the wall, like maybe behind your monitor or off to the side or something like that. And you look at that thing every day and you say, what is the small incremental thing that I'm doing today in order to achieve my goals, whether it's 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. And it reminds me of that equation that we talk about. 1 to the 365th power is still 1, but 1.01 to the 365th power is like 37. So if you're doing one tiny thing every day to help to achieve your goals, that will add up and you'll start to do more things to get towards those goals. And the fifth one, I had a lot of people balk at this one. The fifth one's kind of scary. The fifth one is, go out and apply for that next role that you want. And that will help, whether it's in your current company or at a different company, that will help you to get feedback from that and understand what are the gaps that you might have. Or in some cases, it led to people just getting that next role. They said, hey, this is what I want. These are my development goals that I'm working on to get there. And they got hired into that role. So those are the 5, and feel free to take those and use them yourself or use them with people that you mentor.
The fourth one resonates with me, right, a lot, because I think in 2023 and in the world of distraction, right, I feel like most people are pretty good at setting goals. I want to do this, right? In fact, as I was sitting there drinking beer with my son last night, who's coming up on 30, he's like, oh, I got to accomplish this thing. I'm like, well, what is the thing you want to accomplish? I don't know, but I feel like I got to do something by the time I'm 30, right? Like, I feel like there's significance there. So like that idea of doing one small thing, whether it's, read an article, do something that gets you closer. It's easy to get caught up in the day to day of kids and life and work and stuff to not really prioritize that stuff for the one. Um, all fantastic, great advice, by the way. I know when I try it. I like the fifth one because you don't know what you don't know, and if you put yourself out there to some extent, you're going to potentially get some feedback on it from a resume, and I like that idea. Now, I'm going to take it one step further, where I would love to see large organizations or just companies in general take those 5 rules you just said and like make them kind of common practice for internal organization. I know some do, right? I'm not saying not every company, but I think that kind of foundational piece really helps it, and invest in invest in your staff, and invest in the future. It builds loyalty, it builds trust, and I think you have a much better, well-rounded team just by applying those 5 principles in internal organization. And the last thing I'll add would be the one biggest footstep I give for like a mentee for a mentor is to always remind them you own the relationship between the mentee and the mentor.
Yep.
Right, because you're generally asking somebody of higher value, right, than you, right, and career value, right. Everybody's equally valued, so I feel like that probably comes out
career value.
Career value, right? Like I'm not going to go ask, you get the point, right? I feel like that's going to be a slippery slope. I'll hurt somebody's feelings in a way. So, but you're going to ask somebody, and so like that person's just generally overall busy. So when you have that 20 minutes or 30 minutes, like come prepared, have your your 5 things and are ready to report out on your 5 goals that you're working towards, and give updates to your mentor, and then shut up, listen and get your feedback, and say thank you till next time. And then you're progressing, you really advocate. Because I've had mentors over the years, and I've had good, I've had great, I've had meh, and it's really like finding that balance of like, what is it that's in it for you, what's in it for the mentor, and what's that right mix.
Yep, absolutely agree. And that's why I would always share these 5 steps at the beginning and say, I'm just being transparent. This is what we're going to do. If you don't want to do it this way, then you should probably find a different mentor. And exactly like you said, I think one of the really important things is if you find someone to be your mentor, is committing to it, really doing the things. Now, listen, life happens, and there can be some reason that, hey, I had this major project or this big incident that happened and I couldn't finish my vision board, but here's what I wanted, here's the idea of it, or something like that. But if you consistently come to a mentoring meeting and you're not having things done, I don't think it's going to work. I think you're going to need to find somebody else, kind of thing.
I mean, even in the absence of a mentor, doing the vision board, I think as a whole, because I think it's so easy for folks to thrust themselves into their job, focus on the immediate, like what's happening in my day or my week, and really not think long term, right? I played golf with a buddy this past week, and we were having conversation around his own kind of career, and where he felt like he came at it from a mindset of like, man, I want to find one really great company and stay forever. Like that's a lot different than what it was 5 or 10 years ago. I think that's desired, but it's not necessarily going to get you the best bang for your buck. And it's actually, a couple of hindsight of like having some mentors, having those conversations, and really thinking through some of that, I think would help, right, for that person.
Yeah. Following up on hindsight, I think one way to be 100% sure that you will never achieve your goals is if you don't have goals. So writing down those goals and what you want to do, you can dream huge here, right? And then putting those up on your refrigerator or behind your desk or whatever it is. So you look at those things every day and you remember, this is what I want to do with my life. Having that is very powerful. Almost as powerful as having a mentor who's holding you accountable and helping you do that. But it's a great way to do it if you haven't found a mentor yet and you're not able to do it. And then when you do, you can share that with them and say, hey, here's my vision, here's my goal. Can you help me come up with a plan on how I can achieve these things?
What would you recommend? Let's say I'm listening to this, Andrew. You just inspired me to go out and find a mentor.
Yeah.
Where do I go? Where do I start?
So there's a group called Cyversity that has cybersecurity mentorships. I'm sure that you can find them online on LinkedIn or whatever. You can sign up to be a mentee. in that group. Now, of course, if you're working at a company, go talk to your boss, go talk to HR and say, look, I'm interested in getting a mentor. There are formal mentorship programs that you can get. But in my opinion, besides those two things, which are great ways to do it, the best way is an informal way, right? Just contacting someone that you know, that you look up to, and say, hey, would you mentor me? And the worst thing that can happen is that someone says no. And the best thing that can happen is it can completely change your life and your career. I did a little, I did some kind of statistics as I was looking at the people that I mentored outside of my own team. And of those people, about 80% of them got promoted while we were doing the mentoring relationship. And about 25% got promoted twice within a very short time frame. And if you go look for statistics on the internet, that was my experience. But you'll find all kinds of things that say, hey, people who have mentors are X percentage more likely to get promoted, to get that next role. So it's a great way to do it. I like the informal approach, but certainly you can go and sign up. There's different places that do it, like Cyversity, and you can go ask your company if they have a formal mentoring program and get into that as well.
I mean, I know in general, the InfoSec cybersecurity community has been very warm and welcoming for most folks, right? And so finding somebody who maybe is at the company or does the role that you want and asking them on LinkedIn, what that looks like is a good way to kind of put yourself out there and find some mentors. I mean, 80% all promotions, pretty staggering.
I didn't know that before I prepared for this session today. I had no idea.
Well, I mean, I think it's indicative, right? Like managers want to see somebody with initiative, right? And you're taking the initiative for a mentor, which means you want to get better, right, at what you're doing. So I mean, at common level, I mean, the math kind of makes sense and checks out of my head where there's some measurement of success for that person that's seeking out betterment, and that's
I think there's another part of it too that can help in the mentee-mentor relationship, and we have this at Nestle, and I've seen other organizations do it too. It's the concept of reverse mentoring. So it wouldn't work really well for you or me, Tony, but imagine that you're a millennial or younger, and you have a lot of experience in the digital world and metaverse and a bunch of different things that people who are our age or older and maybe in leadership positions don't have as much. So I had a lot of very positive relationships of reverse mentoring where people kind of new people into the organization, whether they were interns or apprentices or new hires, would come to me and do a reverse mentoring relationship. And always what it would lead to is a two-way street. So if you offer that, to someone else who's higher up in your organization or somebody else that you know and look up to, there's an opportunity that they will become your mentor kind of by default. In fact, I had one former manager of mine who was really clear. He was like, you know what, you really need to find a mentor and let me know who you think that should be. And like the next week I said, I've decided that my mentor should be you. And he says, oh, well, I'm really, really flattered by that. I'm really honored, but unfortunately I don't have enough time to be your mentor. And I said, okay, no problem. So then what I did is I scheduled a monthly meeting with him, and every month we'd meet. I called it the monthly catch up. And then I'd show him what I was working on and what my plans were and get his advice on it. And that guy ended up becoming my mentor, whether he liked it or not. I just kind of, forced it down his throat sort of thing. So there are ways beyond the no. You can keep going to get the mentor that you want.
Well, I think you just, you took the initiative and said, I only need 30 minutes of your time a month, and booked it. And, and directly, like it is easy to say, man, I'm busy, I ain't got time, but everybody's got 30 minutes they could carve out and really do something if they want to, and like, and have a big impact on somebody's life that you'd be able to figure out. Let's say I'm an Andrew, or I'm a professional and I really want to jump in and I want to find folks that I would mentor. Like what would you suggest, for that?
Well, I think you're kind of setting me up with that question, Tony. I mean, one of the places that I would go to is go to CyberUp. A lot of our apprentices are people that need mentorship. In fact, when I did one of the there's that monthly call with the apprentices, and then people in there said, "Hey, will you be my mentor?" And I had like 3 people I was mentoring right now, and I said, "Not now, but look me up later," kind of thing. So I think that's a great place. I already gave a plug to Cyversity. I think they're a great place if you want to be a mentor. They have like 100 mentors per quarter, so you got to sign up ahead of time to get it.
And I think
there's
that
a lot of organizations
just went live too. The Cyversity one is live right now.
Yeah, but they've been doing it for a while. I had a great Cyversity mentoring experience with a lady who was a sales analyst, and she wanted to be a cybersecurity analyst. And we only had, I think, 6 weeks to do her mentoring, which is a pretty tight time frame. Normally, I would do 6 months, and we would meet once a month. We'd have 6 sessions. So 6 weeks, and I showed her my 5 things, and I said, "You have homework. You're going to have to do it every week." And she was on it. And on the last session that we had, she had applied for a cybersecurity analyst job at the company she was at, and she got it. So it was amazing to see her progress in just 6 weeks. That's not typical. Everybody doesn't get promoted or get the job that they want in 6 weeks. But by committing and doing these things and doing the development and going through the steps, she was able to get it.
Yeah, I mean, there's that group. American Corporate Partners is another one. They're specific to veterans.
Yeah.
Out of up north. I want to say like DC area.
Yeah.
But they've got a really structured kind of onboard. Like corporations will pay American Corporate Partners for mentor relationships, then they get assigned, and then you kind of pick, probably like what you had for Cyversity. You had this person who filled out a questionnaire and said, "Okay, I'm interested in this." You got assigned to her.
Yep.
So similar thing. So I had one years ago. Who knew it was foreshadowing? I was looking at nonprofit stuff, 9 years ago. This guy worked in IT for IBM. I couldn't even spell IT back then. I had an IT mentor. We had a great conversation and really got to know each other really well, but it was a weird fit. I think he said nonprofit like one time 10 years ago. And said like,
right,
"You're the guy." But we've stayed in touch. He was a good enough guy. But like AmeriCorps Partner, Cyversity, I think WESIS may have some mentor programs as well. And I think there's a lot of groups out there trying to build more because there is a big need for it, right? I think there's.
Yeah. The other thing that you can do is just post it openly on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, I've got this type of experience. If I'm looking for someone to mentor, and DM me or comment on this post if you want to hook up." I mean, that's a possibility too.
So I mean, I know I see so many folks on LinkedIn share trials and tribulations of breaking into this, right, or this field. Yep. What advice would you give for those folks, right? Other than I always feel like don't get frustrated, but I have one in particular in my mind. You said 80%, so I think I might have to introduce you to her. See if you can, keep up the magic. But like I think I'm multiple of those folks, there's a high level of frustration where they're trying to break in and they just seem to get past it. Like, what advice would you give, tying that into mentors and mentoring?
Yeah. Now, for those of you who've heard me speak before, you may have heard this advice before, but this is the same advice I give to anybody that's trying to break in, which is if your goal to get into cybersecurity is to be a SOC analyst or a ethical hacker, you might want to think about all of the other domains of cybersecurity. So if you go in as, "I want to be entry-level disaster recovery or GRC or asset management or vulnerability management," or something that's not those kind of 2 standard like SOC analyst or pen tester, I think that's a way to really differentiate yourself from everybody else. I think the other thing is, any way that you can get hands-on experience, get it. Whether it's an unpaid internship, whether it's some stuff that you can do online that you can show, "Hey, I achieved this thing on," there's all those like Hack the Box and things like that. So whatever hands-on experience you can do and show, I think those are great things that will help you kind of break in.
I totally agree. All right. So we have 6 minutes. 30 minutes always goes so fast. So I'd love to hear. I know you had a couple stories kind of cooked up from some of your kind of favorite, past stories of success. I'd love to, if you want to share with the group, some of the positive things to share, like I think to highlight the importance and what are the possibilities of a mentor-mentee relationship.
Yep. So there was a lady that I met in Brazil, And she asked me one time, she said, hey, can we have a chat? I'm interested in cybersecurity. And she was part of the service desk team. And so we talked, and I told her, here's the different things that you can do, different kind of degree programs and certifications and things like that. And she was very excited and interested, and then went on to go do some of that stuff. So I don't know, 6 months later or something, I posted a position in Brazil. And I called her and I said, hey, I posted this position and I noticed that you haven't applied. Why not? And she said, well, I'm just an analyst and it's a specialist position. And I said, you know what, why don't you just go for it? Just give it a shot and see how it goes. So she interviewed, and we interviewed people from KPMG, with 10 years of cybersecurity leader experience. This lady blew them all out of the water. She did amazing. And everyone, including me, agreed, okay, we're going to hire her. So we hired her. She ended up working for me. And then her next goal was she really wanted to move to Europe. She wanted to get a new role in cybersecurity in Europe after we'd done some other development plans and stuff like that. So I said, okay. And so she found this role, and then she said very much the same thing. She said, yeah, I really want it, but it's a senior specialist position and I'm just a specialist. And I said, well, let's do that gap analysis. Let's see what the gaps that you have to get there. And so we looked, and there weren't very many gaps. And over about a 6-month period, she was able to address those gaps. And then she applied for and got the role in Europe. And then she ended up working for another team, but we kept in touch, and kept seeing how she was doing on her development. And then I posted a regional manager job in Europe for cybersecurity. And I had a very similar conversation to what I had had with her, 4 or 5 years previously. I said, hey, I posted this regional manager job. I noticed that you haven't applied. Why not? She said the same thing. Hey, I'm only a senior specialist. This is a leadership role. I've never done that before. And I said, well, let's just give it a shot and try it. Now, I may have come into that interview process a little bit biased, but it's a very democratic interview process. Everybody who interviewed her, in fact, the head of regional IT in Europe called me and said, I want her to be the person for us. So here's a story of someone who was triple promoted within that time. And it was all about looking at the current job, looking at the gaps, addressing those gaps, looking at the next job, looking at the gaps, addressing those gaps, having a vision board, knowing what you want to go, and then applying for that next role. So just applying those 5 steps and moving it forward.
I mean, it seems simple enough. Sign me up. So with our last 2 minutes, the question is always, what advice would you give to those to level up their cyber career?
Yeah, look at where you want to go next. Make that vision board and start doing that one incremental thing every day. Go and find a mentor. Use the 5 steps with your mentor. Have that plan ahead of time. Say, this is what I want to follow. Now, they might have a better plan or a different plan. That's fine too. But just come in there ready to go, ready to do stuff. Take it seriously. No one is going to care more about your career than you do. No one's going to hand it to you. You got to go out there and get it and do it. So you can do it. Go level up your career.
I like the advice. Andrew, I appreciate the conversation. I know those that tuned in, I'm sure did as well. This is a story as old as time, the mentor-mentee relationship and how to do it well. And, lots of positive things come out of this stuff if you do it the right way. And I really like the 5-step approach, or the 5-rule approach. Makes it pretty tangible and seems realistic. For everybody who's tuning in next week, excited to have Raphael Constantine join for our next episode. Talk about hiring in a small shop. Right, Raphael's built a team from the ground up through the use of apprenticeship over the past 5 years, and so excited to jump in. He's just a great dude in general. So excited to have him jump in with us, and then we had a couple other episodes coming up. Excited, and some good guests coming up. So as always, hope you guys have a great week. Hope you all had a great 4th. Andrew, thank you again.
Thank you, Tony. Cheers.
No problem. Hey, have a great day.
Bye-bye.